The 2021 Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS season, started in spectacular fashion yesterday here at Northern California's Sonoma Raceway. K-Pax Racing announced its return to North American competition with a dominant 1-2 finish with its new Lamborghinis, headed by the pairing of Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper. It was a picture-perfect start for K-Pax, but the rest of the GT World Challenge field has its own ideas for Race 2 today. Hello, my name is Ryan Marine. Amanda Busick will be reporting from the pit lane. Filling in for our friend Calvin Fish this weekend is GT World Challenge Europe analyst John Watson. We'll hear from both of them in just a few minutes, but first, let's take a tour of this 2.5-mile Sonoma Raceway circuit with our Porsche track preview.
Hi, my name is Jan Halen. We're here at Sonoma Raceway with SRO Motorsports for the Porsche track preview. We're getting ready to start the lap, coming onto the front straightaway here. Up through the gears, all the way to 6th gear, up to 145 mile an hour. It's the fastest part of the track. Very bumpy, going uphill, braking into turn 2. Down to 2nd gear, car gets very light here on the exit. Accelerating out, getting ready for turn 3. Lots of compression at the apex of 3 here. 85 mile an hour, 3rd gear, back to power. Car again getting very light on the exit and hard on the brakes for turn 4. 1st or 2nd gear, accelerating out, getting ready for the carousel. Up the hill, very tricky braking. 4th gear, down to 3rd, car again getting light on the brakes, and then preparing for a good exit onto the back straightaway. 3rd, back through the gears, 5th gear, all the way up to 140 mile an hour, and then hard on the brakes for the hairpin, down to 2nd, back to power. Car slides around a ton here, so gotta be careful how to apply the power. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, getting ready for the S's. Small lift only, back to power, and ready for the S's. Hard on the brakes here at the 300, lots of dust flying up here, hard on the curbs, back to power, 1st gear, back to power. Sweeping right, flat out, getting ready for the last corner. Tight hairpin, 1st gear, all about getting a good exit here. Good rotation, hard back to power, and back onto the front straightaway, and that was a lap at Sonoma Raceway in the Porsche GT3R.
Not only was yesterday the first race of the GT World Challenge America season, it also started the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS Global Championship for manufacturers. This year, 6 manufacturers, you see them on the screen, are scoring points across 4 championships in the US, in Europe, in Asia, and Australia, and across all the different class categories within those championships. So, leaving round 1 yesterday, Porsche with the lead, Lamborghini currently 2nd, Mercedes-AMG in the 3rd spot, Ferrari trailing BMW. No Audis on site here this weekend, but we hope to see them again soon. Beautiful pictures here in Sonoma. Sonoma Raceway, a beautiful sight at this time of year. Green on the hillsides and a perfect setting for the first weekend of the season for GT World Challenge America. Let's go down to the grid where Aurora Strauss will be singing the national anthem.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air,
Aurora Strauss, fresh off of a fourth-place finish in Pirelli GT4 America AM Class competition earlier today with the national anthem. I'd like to bring in John Watson here very briefly as we get ready for the start of this race. It's a beautiful racetrack that you've got some experience on, John.
Hi, Ryan. Yes, I do. Back in 1985, 86, I came here, raced in the IMSA GTP series. But just looking out of the commentary booth window, I noticed that the wind has begun to pick up. Now, that's going to be into the cars coming onto pit straight. It'll not really have a major effect, but it is a change to the circuit.
One of the storylines that we'll be keeping an eye on as we get ready to start the second round of the GT World Challenge America season. Back here at Sonoma Raceway, let's get down to Amanda Busick in the pit lane for an update.
Well, we are just moments away from round 2 for the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS Race here. And no one had a better start to the weekend than this guy right here. Andrea Caldarelli brought it to the checkered flag. You'll have that chance to do that today with you under the helm. What would it mean to you to see that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we want to repeat what we did yesterday. It was a great start of the season, starting P1 and finish with the victory. It's always a nice moment. I'm really looking forward to finish the race now. I started yesterday, so now it's up to me to finish the race.
Well, Andrea Caldarelli makes his debut here in the SRO America Series. There's several rookies that are on hand here this weekend. One is with the Racers Edge team. They've partnered with Honda Performance Development to be kind of an academy for drivers to come up into the ranks. Taylor Hagler joins us on site today. And Taylor, it's been your rookie weekend here. You guys finished 5th overall yesterday, 3rd in the Pro-Am. How do you build on that effort?
I think we're both really, really excited and really pleased with those results. I mean, my rookie season in this car, his rookie season in this car, he has a little bit more prototype experience. I have touring car experience, so to come right out of the bat and have a podium, we're pretty excited about that. We've just been going over some data. We've made some changes to the car just for a little bit long-term experience, and we both have a better idea of how our competitors are going to drive, so we're able to kind of work on a plan to figure out how we need to address our driving style to accommodate that and hopefully just go for a better podium.
Well, there's other teams looking to address issues. As we know, there are highs and lows in racing, and DXDT faced a lot of them yesterday. The owner, David Askew, went into the back of George Kurtz. You also had Erin Vogel that had to pit, unfortunately, due to her seatbelts coming loosened. But one guy that's having a great weekend is George Kurtz. He swept the GT America class. And, George, you guys start from the front row today. How do you capitalize on that qualifying effort?
Well, it was a tremendous effort by Colin just to put in a flyer, and he's one of the best guys on the grid here. So hopefully he can get past any mess in the middle and bring it in for me, and hopefully I'll take it home.
Ryan, if I'm not crazy, I think those might be race engines you guys are hearing.
Gotta love that sound. We're about ready to go racing here at Sonoma Raceway. Great stuff from you, Amanda. Welcome to the broadcast team. Well, plenty of storylines up and down this pit lane, John. We talked some about it yesterday. We had the AMs and the Pro-Am lineup starting yesterday. Today, though, it's the pros that start those Pro-Am cars, and that mixes up the starting lineup. We'll talk more about that here in just a moment. The cars headed out onto the grid for the first of 2 formation laps here at Sonoma Raceway. So, John, the car's headed out on the track here for those 2 formation laps, and it is a mixed-up grid from what we saw yesterday because the pros qualified for this race in those Pro-Am lineups, and that's going to really mix things up.
Yes, I think the grid we had yesterday was very much dominated by the 2 K-Pax Lamborghinis, and then the rest of the field were behind and a considerable distance behind. But for this race here this afternoon, we've got a much more representative grid with those pro drivers carrying out the qualifying. And in fact, Colin Brown and the DXDT Mercedes has split those 2 Lamborghinis by being on the front row alongside Jordan Pepper in the number 3 K-Pax Racing Lamborghini. What I'm hoping for is we're going to see more action, certainly in the first half of this race with the pro drivers at the front of the field. Conditions are very similar other than that little bit of wind that's picked up over the last few minutes. Nevertheless, the field makes their way around. They need to get You can see the amount of weaving that the drivers are employing to try and get some tire temperature, not just surface temperature, but core tire temperature, to ensure that when this race goes green and they rush into turn 1, more so into turn 2, that their car will be with them. The grip is going to be there. They don't want to make an idiot of themselves on the opening lap.
On one side of the equation, you have K-Pax Racing, a near-perfect weekend to this point, a 1-2 yesterday. But on the other side, DXDT Racing, no team was more disappointed leaving the track yesterday. 3 cars, all of them had problems. And so that will be a story to watch for as the 3 DXDT Racing Mercedes will try and put yesterday behind them, and a great start to that end when Colin Brown was able to put his CrowdStrike-sponsored Mercedes-AMG GT3 Evo on the outside of the front row. Looking back a little bit further, the Wright Motorsports Porsche came away with the Pro-Am class win. Fred Pordat, last year's Am champion, teaming up with veteran Jan Haylen. He gave us the tour around this track just a little while ago. A very stout driver lineup, to be sure. And we heard from Taylor Hagler. Keep an eye on her co-driver, the rookie Dakota Dickerson. A lot of single-seater experience, was in a great battle with Ryan Dial yesterday in one of those DXDT Racing Mercedes. I suspect he learned a lot from the wily veteran in those exchanges. This is going to be a year of learning for him and for his fellow HPD GT3 Driver Academy alumna in Taylor Hagler. So plenty of things to be looking for as we get closer to the start of this race. This field of GT3 cars out on the second of 2 formation laps. A crucial time here, John, as this field gets ready to go to green to make sure all the systems are ready to go, the tires are up to temperature and pressure, and then you deal with the nerves going into turn 1 for the first time. These drivers, this is the first time this weekend that they've started the race. How do you approach a race coming to the green flag on the formation lap like this?
Well, it's all about your focus, particularly on that opening lap. And again, you can see just how much movement the drivers are putting into their cars to get that tire temperature up to a tire temperature and tire pressure. But just looking through the grid, there are a few driver car combinations that I would say are out of position. If you go all the way to the back of the grid, row 7, Giacomo Altoe in the Lamborghini TR3 Racing, they had a problem in yesterday's race, right at the back of the grid. Likewise, Robbie Foley in the Turner Motorsport BMW was going extremely well, but got tired coming down into the hairpin. That's out of position. I'd expect that to make progress very quickly. And likewise, Ryan DL, who was in that mix, the battle with the Acura NSX GT3, he ran across the chicane. He just got a quick glimpse of it, and the consequence was, I think, there was a small amount of front-end damage, and that put an end to his charge to try and maybe consolidate a little bit further in the field than he probably would be rather disappointed with. Finishing in 4th place potentially could have been a better finish.
Another car to throw into that category would be the Windward Racing Mercedes, running towards the top in the combination of drivers, Russell Ward and Phil Ellis. They had an alternator issue that came to light during the pit stop when the car was shut off. The battery wasn't charged to get it back going. That's been rectified overnight, and they've got aims on charging to the front from a ways back in this grid. Field coming into alignment, coming out of turn 10, headed to the hairpin of turn 11, and then it's that quick left-hand jink to the left where they will await the green flag. Front row, K-Pax Racing Lamborghini, DXDT Racing Mercedes, coming around the corner for that green. Watching for it, and Aurora Strauss waves it. Problems at the start for the Lamborghini, and it's dropped back from the pole quite a bit. Advantage Colin Brown, he sprints ahead. Another great start as well from Jan Haylen, jumps up to the 2nd position, but something went wrong for Jordan Pepper, the pole sitter, and the race-winning car from yesterday. He's fallen all the way back to 4th. It bottles up behind. You see Michael Cooper making a move in one of the Mercedes, the purple-colored Mercedes, further back in the field. And how about this aggressive move? Pepper wants that spot back if he can get it from the newcomer, Dakota Dickerson. They remain side by side, headed towards the carousel.
Ryan, I think he was tagged from the back. I'm talking about Jordan Pepper. I think he was tagged from the rear by his own teammate Giovanni Venturini, who was really, really keen to try and annex Colin Brown in the Mercedes on that split front row grid. So the contact, if we get a replay, we'll probably see the green Lamborghini now making its way ahead of the Acura up into turn 7 of the hairpin. I think it was he who tagged the back of the black Lamborghini, the pole sitter, Jordan Pepper. That's not how I think K-Pax would have expected the start of race 2 here this weekend to have gone.
Darren Law, the team manager, will not like that one bit if that is indeed the case. We did see Pepper and now Venturini able to recover a little bit. Both of them are past Dakota Dickerson in the Racer's Edge Acura, just a little bit behind. And then a couple of Mercedes going at it. Philip Ellis in the Windward Racing car, the non-Evo spec Mercedes-AMG GT3. And leading around behind, Ryan Dial, who got bottled up at the start, lost a couple of spots, and a racy second stint in that race yesterday. On the attack here, trying to make up for lost time after not getting the start to the race he would have hoped. One lap complete, and it's Colin Brown leading over Jan Haywen by over 1 second.
Yes, and I think before this race began, I don't think anybody would have predicted what occurred literally at the point where the race got underway. But all the better, because what we saw yesterday was just effectively a domination from the K-Pax Racing Lamborghini, in particular the number 3 car. The number 6 car had to work a little bit harder to get its second position, but there are the lead 2 cars. Jan Heylen behind the wheel of the Porsche and pushing very hard on the exit coming out of Carousel, followed now by Jordan Pepper. Got a certain amount of clear air, and he has now got the focus of how will I catch the Porsche. Catching is one thing. On this difficult to overtake Sonoma Raceway, finding a way around is another thing. Good pass up the inside 63, and that was Ryan DL, used all that experience and knowledge. That was a hard pass, got it done cleanly, and he's taken advantage.
We saw Ryan make a move in that corner around the outside. This time he makes the crossover work, up a position, recovering a little bit, lost 2 positions on that opening lap, one of the bigger losers in the field. Bobby Foley of note lost 3 spots in the Turner BMW. He's all the way back to 12th. And Giacomo Altoe, you mentioned him as perhaps starting a bit out of place. Great start for him, up 3 positions, still mired back in 11th, but good progress on the first lap alone. Ellis drops back behind Diao. He's already lost a great deal of ground, and now it's Michael Cooper's turn to make a charge at that Mercedes for Windward Racing just up the road.
So we're on to lap 3, and things, one might say, are settling down, but Michael Cooper pushing very hard indeed, and up into turn 3, then the turn right at 3A, then the drop down the hill into turn 4. So we've got a gaggle, and the BMW, the Turner Motorsport BMW, amongst those cars.
Let's take a look at the start, and I just got word that the 3 Lamborghini, the pole sitter, might have had a fuel pressure issue coming to the green, and that could have caused its slow acceleration there, John.
Yeah, there was still contact between the two Lamborghinis. There was still contact between the green and the black Lamborghini. Whatever the cause, maybe something did momentarily cause the number 3, the pole sitting car, up between Jordan Pepper. Whatever it was, there was, in my opinion, looking at the pictures there, contact. So we'll maybe find out a little bit more once the drivers in this opening stint have their chance to come into pits and hand over to their teammates.
I'm sure Amanda will be checking on that, and certainly would be very curious to hear from both Jordan Pepper and Giovanni Venturini on how that played out. But again, the word from the pit lane was a fuel pressure issue at the start that might have caused that stack up. It seems to have resolved itself, at least to this point. Jordan Pepper moving pretty quickly, but it's Jan Haywen, actually, that is the fastest car on track, had the fastest lap the last time by. We'll see what happens here on this tour of the circuit, but it does look like he's closing in ever so slightly on the leading car. Colin Brown at the wheel at the moment. I know it says George Kurtz, but George is going to be taking control following this pit stop. And it does sound like Amanda has an update for us from the K-Pax crew. What can you tell us, Amanda?
Well, Ryan, while I cannot confirm a fuel pressure issue, their understanding over here at K-Pax, I did speak with Corey Lewis, who will take over for Giovanni. They believe that someone went into the back of Giovanni, who went into Jordan Pepper. Darren Law has been busy into his computer. I have not been able to get an update for them, but definitely some concern from K-Pax as we start this race.
Yeah, let's take a look at it again here real quick. Well, we will see what we can make of that. That was definitely an interesting start, to say the least. Nevertheless, we are racing here at Sonoma Raceway, and it's Colin Brown out in front in the DXDT Racing Mercedes.
Today's coverage is brought to you in partnership with Fanatec, AWS, and CrowdStrike.
George Kurtz continues to lead. Sorry, that's Colin Brown continuing to lead over Jan Halen. But Jan Halen getting closer, John. You can see that Porsche making up the gap. He cut 0.2 of a second off on that last lap alone.
Yes, he's been taking 0.2 of a second off the lead from Colin Brown over the last 2 laps. So he is making inroads into the leading Mercedes. So the man on the charge, Jan Halen, in the Porsche, number 20, is the quickest car. He's got the fastest race lap so far. We're only on now, going on to the 5th lap, and Halen is looking to further get to the rear of the Mercedes. Look how hard he is pushing as he comes into the carousel. The nose of the car just weaving around under braking. So there's not a lot left on the table for Jan Halen. He is driving the wheels off his Porsche in the pursuit of Colin Brown in the lead Mercedes.
I've thought for some time that Jan Halen's a bit on the underrated side. You plug him into a Porsche and he is fast right away, whether it's GT4 or this GT3R we see him in now. Fascinating, John, that we've got 2 Pro-Am cars out in front being chased by 2 of the All-Pro cars, the K-Pax Lamborghinis. Do you think they can afford to be a bit more patient here at the start, knowing they're going to be turning their cars over to fellow pro-class runners, whereas the 2 cars ahead of them, it'll be amateur drivers, less experienced drivers taking the reins following the pit stop?
Well, first of all, this is not how the script had been written.
No.
This car, one would have said, ought to have been leading the race comfortably. And the 4th place Lamborghini Venturini, running directly now behind the sister car, should have been in 2nd place, but tear the script up. Thank goodness they've torn it up. We've got a much better race as a consequence. But clearly, when these 2 Lamborghini make their pit stops, they are pro drivers replacing pro drivers, and that is a significant advantage. Now, what will happen, of course, as we saw yesterday, we had a full course yellow and a safety car intervention. All those factors are unpredictable. We don't know. All we can look at and say, here's the information we've got. Put 2 pro drivers into a very, very strong driver team lineup. You have to think they might be at the front of the field at the end of this event.
Well, here is a reprise of a battle we saw taking place just yesterday in race 1 of the weekend. Ryan Dial chasing down the youngster Dakota Dickerson, a champion in F4 competition, a champion in F3 competition, but has turned his focus to sports car racing here with his HPD Driver Academy program, but he's got the wily veteran Ryan Dial giving chase at Sonoma Raceway. Colin Brown showing the way through the chicane here, 5 laps and change into race 2 of the weekend, 2nd race of the season for the Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS. 14 cars took the green flag, and it was not without some controversy, to say the least. Let's take a look at our race vision powered by AWS. Top speeds overall, and John, look at that, the Porsche at the top of the list with Jan Halen behind the wheel.
Well, that's part of the contribution to the ability of Halen to run down Colin Brown in the lead Mercedes. The gap actually has stalled out, and in fact it's extended back in favour of Colin Brown. It was up to 0.7 of a second. Now it's all the way up to 1.3 of a second. So either the Porsche maybe used its tyres a little bit more aggressively than the lead Mercedes did. For sure, when it comes to tyre usage, the Mercedes-AMG GT3 is amongst the most kind to its Pirelli tyres in the field. And this is a racetrack, Ryan Dial told us yesterday, that tends to be a high degradation racetrack. I don't know what it's like in these ambient temperatures at this time of year, but ordinarily if you're in the heart of the summer when it's up to around 100 Fahrenheit at Sonoma Raceway. Everybody is looking, including the tires, looking for mercy.
Well, watching Jan Halen lap this track, he and his co-driver Fred Pordat teamed up for the Pro-Am class win yesterday, and Fred is watching on with Amanda alongside.
Oh, yeah, and they're one of those teams that ended up benefiting from that wacky start. They started in fourth, now up into the second position. Fred, what was your reaction at that?
Well, yeah, totally unexpected, obviously, two Lamborghinis hitting each other at the start, but I think the first one in line had a little bit of a problem. But I think the key is you have to capitalize on these things, and Jan Halen did a great job of just slotting in there between them and got into P2. So very happy with that, and his pace is great right now, so hopefully we can keep this up for the whole race.
And speaking of that wacky start, we got word from race control. No further action taken for the contact that did occur between the two K-Pax Racing Lamborghinis. I think it was enough punishment in and of itself. They've dropped off from first and third on the grid, now running third and fourth, and quite a ways behind our top two. Looks like Colin Brown has been able to extend that lead ever so slightly. It's now up to about 2 seconds, and Jordan Pepper, slowly but surely, reeling the top two in.
Yes, I've been keeping an eye on Jordan Pepper. I'm surprised that the progress for the number 3 Lamborghini has not been a little bit more rapid. I'd have expected that car to be right on the tail of the Porsche to push Jan Halen towards the back of the Mercedes. It's slowly beginning to happen. Jordan Pepper in the number 3 Lamborghini is currently 1.6 seconds behind second place Porsche, and that car, the Porsche, has on third consecutive lap dropped further behind the race-leading Mercedes of Colin Brown. So why is the Porsche dropping back? Well, I suggested maybe it's a little overuse of the tyre. That might be one reason. Certainly it's probably a grip matter, whether it's from tyres or whether it's another issue, we don't know. But right now it's a comforting position for the number 4 Mercedes-Benz to have a 2-second lead. A 2-second lead is comfortable.
Well, that's GT3 racing in this day and age. These cars are so evenly balanced with the SRO balance of performance. It's hard to build a lead of any kind of consequence. We saw the Lamborghinis do it yesterday, but now the Mercedes flexing its muscle just a little bit here in race number 2. Speaking of Mercedes, we've got Ryan Dial chasing Dakota Dickerson, but it's Dakota Dickerson of all drivers to this point at our Race Vision powered by AWS, of all the Pro-Am drivers, with the fastest corner speed in turn 6. That's that carousel. That's a high commitment corner. If you're carrying a lot of speed through there, you've got confidence in your race car, right, John?
Yes, indeed. But what also you might point out is the reason, or part of the reason why he's the quickest of the Pro-Am drivers in turn 6 is because he's got right behind him Ryan Dial, who's the second quickest in the carousel. So these two are pushing one another along. Ryan Dial takes a very early line, hugs almost the whole middle or inside of the corner to try and find the bite. Now he is looking for bite from the front right tyre to enable him to hold that nose. And look how much he's closed down in that sort of sequence of 2 corners. He is closed down very quickly indeed now onto the tail of Dickerson in the Acura NSX.
Now we've seen Dial very strong in that 7-7A complex. They came through a moment ago, made some passes there early in the race, past Dakota Dickerson there around the outside in the race yesterday. Here through the chicane, needs to get the power down nicely. Now the right-handed bend of turn 10 and the run into turn 11. Heavy braking zone, great passing opportunity if you're close enough. Dial does not think he is, stays line astern and tucks back in behind Dickerson in that Acura. But a nip and tuck battle between these two and a repeat, like I said, of what we saw yesterday.
Well, these two hard at it and coming across start-finish line, up into turn 1, then through into 2. The Acura and the Mercedes look absolutely planted as they come out, and then the short shoot, then the compression into turn 3, then quickly back to the right through turn 3A. Car gets slide over the top as we go back to the battle going on further down the field. And looking at the BMW, which is currently in 12th place, fighting with Kazarov and the Lamborghini in 11th.
That's right, Foley at the wheel of the Turner BMW, chasing the Reardon Lamborghini of Vesko Kozarov. It was a difficult start for Foley, dropped about 3 positions there on the opening lap, but he's gathered it back up and is trying to recover. He'll be turning it over to Michael Dinan. This is one of the all-pro entries in this field, chasing down the Pro-Am entry of Kozarov, who shares that car with Jeff Burton. Up front, Colin Brown leads Jan Halen by 2.5 seconds. Jordan Pepper running third, but closing in his K-Pax Racing Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. Just over 15 minutes into this race, and it's starting to find a bit of a rhythm after what was an unpredictable start, to say the least. Watching this BMW M6 GT3, and John, on our race vision yesterday, we saw that this BMW very fast in a straight line. That's where it was having some success relative to the competition.
Indeed it was, and for a car that has been around for a number of years, it is still a very effective race car. Again, part of this SRO Stefan Rotell organization policy of balance of performance. As we look at the Ferrari, the only AM entry in this field, also trying to get around the Aston Martin in 13th place. But the BMW, to go back to it, there we see it again right behind on the rear wing of the Lamborghini, up through turn 1 into turn 2. Kozarov knows he's got a fight in his hands. Robbie Foley clearly looking to find a way past. The car we know has got good straight line performance. It's not bad on a corner either. And one would assume, I would assume, that it's not going to be if, but more when Foley finds a way around the 91 Lamborghini.
Foley, of the two, is the more experienced in GT3 cars. I don't believe Vesko had sat in one of these Lamborghinis until arriving maybe at a test, or perhaps even here this weekend. So it's been a learning curve, to say the least, but he's an experienced pro, raced in a number of different series, lots of different cars over the years, and he won't be rattled by that big old M6 in the rear view mirror. 1:11 left on the clock, just a shade under 1:12 as a matter of fact. Colin Brown, his lead continues to grow, 2.7 seconds now over Jan Halen. Jordan Pepper runs third. Giovanni Venturini is in fourth as it stands. Great bounce back, though, from the DXDT racing team. Had a miserable day, quite frankly, yesterday. All 3 cars had problems. David Askew and Ryan Dial had a decent recovery, all things considered, but you look at the way that the weekend started and the season started, it's not the way that they anticipated, certainly with the kind of investment that they placed in the off-season and the upgrades in engineering. They brought in Aaron Gehagen to oversee the team, longtime team manager, and moved into a new shop in North Carolina. This team is loaded for bear, and the results in the first round of the season really didn't show the amount of work that went into it. And again, if this is another team, if you go to their tent, the cars are so well prepared, and you can see every attention to detail is focused on it. Right now, it is paying dividends with Colin Brown out in front of Jan Halen. Colin Brown leads Jan Halen. The gap has grown 2.7 seconds now. Mercedes over Porsche. And lurking in the background, the 2 K-Pax Racing Lamborghinis. They went 1-2 in race 1 yesterday, led by Jordan Pepper and his counterpart Giovanni Venturini, 3rd and 4th. This battle continues to rage, with Dakota Dickerson holding off Ryan Dial, and an interested spectator in the pit lane, along with Amanda Busick is the team owner of Racer's Edge. It's John Meraki.
Oh yeah, and Ryan, as we talked about earlier in the show, Racer's Edge has combined with Honda Performance Development to bring rookie drivers into seat time. Well, this season you see Taylor Hagler along with Dakota Dickerson. But John, this is a personal effort for you. Why is this so important to you?
Well, I have such a passion for the sport, and I find it really, it's important to me to share that passion. And one of the ways that I've been able to do that is to work with young drivers coming into the sport. So it's great to share the passion, but it's also extremely rewarding back to me. I mean, I look at the job Dakota's doing right now, running 5th overall amongst all those professional drivers. Last year he was an academy student. I mean, it's tremendously rewarding.
Well, these academy students make their debut this weekend. There'll be a whole set of new drivers next season.
That's right, the GT3 Academy from HPD starting up again here soon. And John, so crucial for these manufacturers to identify young talent early, get them in the pipeline, and get them up into the pro ranks if they show promise.
Well, before I get into that particular issue, I just wanted to go back to the subject of Colin Brown leading this race, and what a difference and the lead of a race makes to a team's fortunes. And the fact that they've now got a 2.7, almost 2.8 second advantage over the second place Jan Halen in the Porsche. And again, surprisingly, the fact that the Apex Porsche Jordan Pepper has not been able to deliver the kind of performance that we saw that car dominate with on Saturday's opening race. But to go back to the issue of young drivers being brought forward, of course manufacturers are looking at the young talent. There is so much young talent around the world, and I'm talking about young talent. A lot of them aren't even 20 years of age. They've had a career in karting, they've done some junior single-seater racing, maybe can't afford to move forward, and they've found an area and a future racing in GT3 here in North America, in Europe, in Asia, in Australia. It is the most successful form of motorsport on a global platform, as we just see the race leader coming through turn 5 up the hill and dropping down into the carousel, making it look sublime.
Well, John, to your point about these young drivers maybe running out of funding to go run formula cars, you can come to sports car racing and get paid to race as a young driver, whereas you're probably paying your way through the ranks in formula cars until you get to the upper echelons.
Yes, indeed, that is the case. I mean, certainly for a young driver who would be signed to a manufacturer here, in the case of Lamborghini or Acura or Mercedes, Audi, who are not represented here this weekend, they all have these young driver programs. And then when you become a fully signed up member of one of the manufacturers, then you get placed. It might be in Europe, it might be in North America, it could be in Asia, it could be in Australia. So the opportunities are very, very broad. And I mean, it's a great career move for anybody who wants to be a professional racing driver to look at this form of this discipline of motor racing. It is absolutely, I think, fantastic.
And the opportunities on a global nature are only enhanced by the global aspect of GT3 racing. You could take this GT3 Lamborghini you're looking at right here and race it unchanged in SRO championships all around the world. GT World Challenge America, Europe, Australia now, as well as the Asian Championship, in addition to other championships that subscribe to GT3. So, if you find yourself as a young driver in a factory program, who knows where they could send you? The opportunities are almost limitless.
Just watching fourth place Giovanni Venturini, he is actually beginning to make inroads into the sister car Jordan Pepper. The gap is just over 1.5 seconds, and likewise the gap between first and second had been up to 2.7, 2.8 seconds. That is now beginning to reduce fractionally. Jan Halen has found a little bit of pace somewhere on the last couple of laps, so he's clawing back its fractions of seconds. Nevertheless, Colin Brown is in a comfortable position and just driving in a metronomic manner and just wheel perfect.
Yeah, no complaints from the DXDT Racing pits for sure on the way Colin has driven to this point. Extremely experienced guy. This is another driver who I think is going to make a name for himself here in the States. You're very familiar with what he's done over in Europe, John. Giacomo Altoe, extremely fast in a Lamborghini.
He is, and I mean, he had a miserable day yesterday. So the team worked a long time to get this car prepared, started at the back of the field, has made very good progress up into the top 10 in 10th position, running now behind the 77 Acura, and that's Matt McMurray behind the wheel right now. So he's got that within his sights, and he will be, well, at 1 second, that's the gap. You can see it, how little 1 second is on the racetrack. There is the Acura NSX GT3, followed by the white Lamborghini Huracan GT3 with Giacomo Altoe behind the wheel.
And speaking of the Compass Racing Acura just up the road, Matt McMurray driving now. His co-driver Rodrigo Salas had a great start. Jumped a couple spots right at the drop of the green flag yesterday. But their race went awry, and it proved to be a pivotal moment in the race in many respects. They lost a rear wheel following a pit stop. It apparently did not get totally solidified on the car in that pit stop, and it brought out a full course yellow. It put an end to what was otherwise a fairly promising day for this team that has experience running GT3 cars, primarily McLarens, but not in this championship. And speaking to Carl Thompson, the team owner, he said, "We're still learning the rules. The SRO pit stop is different than what we've done before, and that's something that it's very important to get on top of from a team's perspective, right? You have to understand how these rules are in order to take the best advantage of that." Another Acura running towards the pointy end of this field, Dakota. Dickerson still holding off Ryan Diao. I'll tell you what, this young man has really come a long way in a short amount of time. You never would have guessed. He's new to GT racing, but he's made the transition from the open wheel ranks very smoothly to this point, holding off Ryan Diao, a 24 Hours of Daytona winner earlier this year, as it runs.
Today's coverage is brought to you in partnership with Pirelli, Rebellion, and Total.
Dakota Dickerson, that car breaking loose a bit over the top of that hill. And John, the transition from open wheel racing to sports car racing, what are the biggest challenges that a young driver is going to face as he moves into a new form of the sport at a new stage of his career?
Principal difference, I would say, would be the difference in the weight of the cars. On a single-seater, maybe just over half the weight of a GT3 car. So these are around about 1,000 to 1,100 kilograms. The tyre is a totally different tyre, the way the tyre operates with a heavier car. But these cars have got a lot of aero as well. While a single-seater, a small, lightweight single-seater will be aerodynamically fundamentally dominated, the aerodynamics on these GT3 cars now is extremely sophisticated. Year upon year, there are fine trimming improvements going on. And while this looks like the Mercedes-AMG GT3 that you could go down to your friendly Mercedes-Benz dealer and purchase, the actual race car is a turnkey race car. This is not a road legal car, it is a turnkey race car.
And what are some of the differences? What makes this a GT3 car? What do the manufacturers have to put into these cars to fit the regulations and convert what would have otherwise been a road-going car into a purebred race car?
Well, the manufacturers can either build a road car and adapt it to a race context, or build a race car and convert it to a road car context. It depends on the individual manufacturers and their approach.
Now this is a premature pit stop here. Compass Racing just singing their praises a moment ago. Matt McMurray heading down the pit lane, and this is before the pit window is open, so I'm not sure what the cause of this would be. They're actually refueling that car. I find this very strange, don't you?
Well, I don't know why they would want to refuel the car, other than I think that no, there's simply a refueling. They may have a fuel pickup issue. But look, here's a more important issue. Jordan Pepper is struggling, and Venturini behind him is closed down. They're now, less than a second. You can see how close they are.
Well, this is a role reversal from what we've seen much of the weekend, with the number 3 Lamborghini tending to lead the way over the 6, the sister cars from K-Pax Racing, but the pendulum is starting to shift. We're seeing Giovanni Venturini closing in on Jordan Pepper. 1 hour to go, closing in on the first round and the only round of pit stops here shortly at Sonoma Raceway. The fight for 3rd overall and the lead in the pro category starting to heat up. A moment ago, we saw the Compass Racing Acura have to make its way down pit lane and refuel. This is before the pit window was open, so we'll have to get some information on what happened there. But Giovanni Venturini, John, is the man on the move.
He's run down his sister car, and the gap when they came across the start-finish line on the last lap was 9/10 of a second. They're virtually identical lap times on that last lap. Whatever the problems that Jordan Pepper is having to cope with, to deal with, he may have got a handle on it. And the only other excuse I can give for the two Lamborghinis running now at an identical lap time is that Venturini is maybe capable of lapping more quickly, but is being pace dictated by the sister car of Jordan Pepper. So I don't know whether Venturini will be able to find a way around and make some progress. Remember, Jordan Pepper himself is just over 2 seconds behind the second place Porsche of Jan Helen.
As we watch Colin Brown lead this race, his co-driver George Kurtz is standing by with Amanda.
And he's feeling pretty comfortable with that 2.5 second lead. But George, as you know, these driver changes are so important. What's going to be crucial on this pit stop?
Well, as you said, it's going to be all about a good driver change, and we've done some practice. Obviously, we worked together for many years, and hopefully we get out in first place, and just keep the momentum going.
Well, that's the strategy for sure, and then this race will really change its dynamic when the AM part of the Pro-Am pairings take over. The two cars up in front, it'll have AM strapping in George Kurtz, Fred Pordad, with a couple of all-pro lineups chasing them down. John, that's going to be interesting to see how the AMs fare when the pro pressure starts to mount.
Indeed, and of course the pit stops in themselves are very important. There is a delta time that they must not exceed. But what is interesting is, in effect, the top 4 cars are all lapping on any given lap within a tenth or so of a second of one another. And then further down the field, there's a little bit further gap. In the next is Dakota Dickinson in 5th place. He is the only other driver who's currently lapping below the 1 minute 41 second barrier. Randy L is just outside it on that last lap. But here you see 3rd place Lamborghini, 4th place Lamborghini. Venturini did all the hard yards to catch up to his sister car, but he's gotten in that zone where the aerodynamic wash may be having an effect, and that's what's maybe going to preclude him before the pit stop window opens from getting on terms with Jordan Pepper in that black K-Pex Lamborghini Huracan.
Top speeds overall, and still the fastest belongs to Jan Halen. No surprise to see Robbie Foley matching that. That BMW has been fast, but he's still stuck behind Vesko Kozarov as it stands. Really impressive to see the lone Ferrari in the field, and this is a car that's been heavily repaired due to an accident back in practice on Friday. Conrad Grunwald showing some impressive speed in that car, despite the fact it's a little bit further down the running order at the moment.
Well, no surprise to me, because I know how strong the Ferrari 488 GT3 is. It's a great race car. It's got a really good straight line performance. We see that in Europe when we go to high-speed circuits, particularly somewhere like Monza or even Spa-Francorchamps. So that is a car, no surprise to see it at the top of the speeds. Here, this is turn 7 is the corner. This is the carousel, the following corner. Up at turn 7 is a 2-part right-hand corner, but the quickest speed is Venturini right now. Colin Braun second. Colin Brown, I keep saying Braun. Colin Brown in the lead Mercedes, second quickest through it. But for Venturini, this is the corner that the speed's 58.7 miles an hour is the fastest speed now, accelerating hard all the way down the hill, down to the chicane. Cars reaching around about 140 miles an hour as they drop down the hill, then a heavy brake. You make your entry into the corner. What's happening here? Replay. Jordan Pepper. Oh, Venturini, what have you done? All those hard yards. Oh, you get away with those things. Well, I wish I got away with it back in 1986. I did, but he certainly did. Good on you, Giovanni, for keeping the car pointing in the right direction.
All credit to him. He's renowned for his talent behind the wheel of the Lamborghini. It was on full display there, able to save himself from what could have been a race-ending situation, running in close proximity to his teammate Jordan Pepper. And you mentioned the aero wake earlier. For someone who has not driven an aero-dependent car, what is the difference that you feel behind the wheel when you're up close to another car that's disturbing the air in front of you?
Well, essentially, you're losing downforce on the front of the race car, the splitter, and all the aerodynamic appendages around the front of the car. They lose that air, that clean air, the clean air that Colin Brown is thoroughly enjoying as he consolidates his lead. So that's a frustration for Venturini.
Colin Brown out in front by 1.7 seconds, but we're just a few minutes away from the pit lane window from opening up. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how these teams fare during the pit stops, because it is a delta that you have to hit. 87 seconds, pit in to pit out, including service, which is 4 tires and fuel plus driver change. All can be done simultaneously, and that is an aggressive delta to hit. It does put the emphasis on these teams getting the job done right, and we saw some teams really capitalizing in the pit lane yesterday.
Yes, it is. Looking at Jan Halen and the Porsche, suddenly is getting a second wind. The gap between first and second was 1.7 seconds a lap ago, down to 1.5 seconds. And a further 1.5 seconds, you can see it just will come into picture, is the third place Jordan Pepper. So suddenly second and third place cars, I say, have just found pace somewhere. Colin Brown, who's been driving absolutely all on his own without any pressure whatsoever, might need to be aware, I'm sure his team are making him aware, that 2.7 second gap he had, some 6 or 7 laps ago, has evaporated down to 1.5 seconds.
Amazing to see what Jan Halen's been able to do, and it seems like he's towing these Lamborghinis with him. We saw the little miscue a moment ago from Giovanni Venturini. That's given Jordan Pepper a bit more breathing room, and he seems to be pushing that car to its limit here as well, and maybe clawing a little bit closer to Halen. 1.5 seconds the difference between both first and second and third, and this is shaping up to be fascinating when we get back from these pit stops.
Well, I think it's going to be key, because with the 3 particularly closing up to the first and second place cars, when it comes to the pit stops, the Capex team, and they will put in Andrea Caldarelli into this car and Corey Lewis into the number 6. They will want to try to get out ahead of these 2 Pro-Am cars that are the current lead cars. Great job by their drivers, but when the AMs get in, then they will find that task maybe a little bit more difficult than the Pro drivers are doing right now.
It'll be a true test of the development of George Kurtz and Fred Pourdad. We'll see what happens after the pit stops in just a moment. You can see the drivers starting to suit up in the pit lane. The K-Pax team looks like they're about ready to spring into action. Question will be strategy. When do you bring these cars in? When is it most beneficial? Running second and third on the road at the moment. And the pit window opens in just a minute. Any thoughts on how K-Pax as a 2-car team might play this strategy?
Well, I do hope they don't bring both cars in together and stack them in the pit lane. That would be a poor decision. Which of the 2 they want to bring in first? Well, right now, Jordan Pepper is picking up pace, but the car combination that's doing the best job is actually second place Jan Halen. He's now got the gap down to race leader Colin Brown, down to 1 point. So in the last number of laps, he's been taking a 2.5 tenths of a second out of the advantage of the lead Mercedes-Benz. And this, again, for these 2 Pro-Am cars, will be crucial. So when they decide to come in, for me, I would keep Colin Brown in the lead Mercedes behind the wheel. I would keep Jan Halen in the second place Porsche behind the wheel of those cars for as long as is possible. But in the case of these 2 Pro cars, the K-Pax Lamborghinis, you could bring one in at the earliest opportunity, which may be the black Lamborghini or the green Lamborghini. I have no idea what the team might choose to do. Again, Venturini has now closed back, get that gap back to Jordan Pepper. It extended up when he made that error going through the carousel. Now he's almost back to as close as he has been at any point in this race as we go on to lap 25.
And the window has opened just 15 seconds ago. These two cars missed the chance to come in, if that's even what they wanted to do, by just a handful of seconds. You cannot come before it reads 50 seconds on the clock. Actually, 49:59 is technically when it opens, and it extends for 10 minutes. So when it reads 40:00, that window is closed. You must be in the pit lane by that time in order for the pit stop to count towards the mandatory pit stop that is required of all teams. If you don't, you have a drive-through penalty. But these teams are well aware of that. They should not run afoul of that rule.
Ryan, you asked me a question a minute ago, which of the two Lamborghinis will be in first. I've made a decision. Whether I'm right or wrong, I've still made the decision. And looking at the way the number 3 Lamborghini Jordan Pepper going through turn 4, that car, the rear end, did not look stable. I suspect it will be the black number 3 Lamborghini of Jordan Pepper who will be the first of the two K-Pax cars in, and that will free up Giovanni Venturini, and he will have clearer air to try and get on terms with the second place Porsche, and then see if that's possible to move forward and have a look at the Mercedes. But I think it'll be the number 3 will be the first of the K-Pax Lamborghinis, and I'm right! What a genius.
John Watson knows what he's talking about, folks. When he speaks, we listen. And right on the money, K-Pax to pit lane with its first car, its leading car. We'll see what they can do on this stop. Keep in mind, it's Jordan Pepper handing over to Andrea Caldarelli, who was lightning fast yesterday. One of the fastest men on the planet in a GT3 car, possibly the fastest in a Lamborghini. Crucial pit stops
so that car
here.
This car has not really looked the car we saw yesterday. Don't know why, whether conditions are different, whether Jordan Pepper just didn't feel the same degree of comfort. We'll see when Andrea Caldarelli gets behind the wheel. That car's quickest lap, I'm just looking down to see timing and scoring, what Jordan Pepper's quickest lap was a 140.1 against the best lap of the race is a 138.3. So that's way off where I would have expected the number 3 K-Pax to be winning. So Andrea Caldarelli floors it and will just break the beam at the pit lane exit precisely. And we need to keep an eye on his lap times. His out lap, of course, will be a lap taking into account the pit stop. It'll be his first flying lap on a fresh set of tyres. Expect something spectacular from the Italian in the number 3 Lamborghini.
And he has the benefit of tire warmers, something very uncommon on this side of the pond, very common in road racing in Europe, but that rule came in a couple of years ago. And here comes the second K-Pax Lamborghini. What do you make of this strategy move?
I think it's the correct move by the team. They're going to come in. The pit lane is relatively empty. There's probably only one other car or two other cars. So they can get their driver changed, tire changed, refueling, all done, get back out again, and let this battle for the lead go on between these two pro drivers in their Pro-Am category. Jan Halen really doing an excellent job now, less than half a second behind the lead Mercedes. The first time Colin Brown has felt really any pressure, other than at the moment when this race did go green. So Venturini out, Corey Lewis will be in behind the wheel of the number 6 Lamborghini, and it'll not be very long before we would anticipate seeing Andrea Caldarelli conclude. There he is, coming up to the conclusion. Well, he's 3/4 of the way around, coming down to the chicane. He will be pushing to the limit, even though the tyres have been in warmers. It still takes that outlap to get the tyre, the pressure, the temperature up into that operating window. Caldarelli, there is the Lamborghini, the 6 Lamborghini, so it has to creep down the pit lane 50 kilometers per hour. You feel you could get out and push the car more quickly than doing 50 kilometers per hour. He's still away from the demarcation line that says, nail it, my son. And where's Andrea? Where's the black Lamborghini? There it is! He's gone through, he's got ahead of his sister car.
Advantage to Caldarelli in the number 3. K-Pax Racing with their strategy call. Keeps the order the same for now, and perhaps an adjustment or two. And that Lamborghini might be a little bit more to their liking, to the driver's liking, because to your point, John, it did not look towards the end of Jordan Pepper's stint that he was terribly happy with that car. Some other pit callers here. And this is a Lamborghini as well, Reardon Racing. I think Vesko Kozarov getting out, Jeff Burton getting in.
Of course, for many of these Pro-Am teams, first time with this car, just simply getting in and out of a modern GT3 car. Very complex cockpits. There are a lot of belts and attachments to the radio. Maybe you have an air hose you want to attach as well to the helmet. Some drivers use those, some drivers prefer not to. And just familiarizing yourself with new territory and then getting the belts exact. We know that the belts yesterday on the Mercedes of Aaron Vogel somehow or other detached. They may not have been actually fully engaged, but they became detached.
Well, you saw a major delay on the Reardon Racing pit stop. Problems with the left front. It seemed like the air gun was unable to get that nut to tighten appropriately. This is a team that is new to these live pit stops, at least in this format. They've done it some in other series in the past, but it's been quite a while. Had to buy all this equipment in the off-season, and everyone on the crew, I think, still getting used to it to some degree. Also, as you noted, John, problems, I think, with the driver exchange as well. Vesko Kozarov and Jeff Burton still sit on the pit lane, and this is never good. If you have to tighten it manually, something has gone horribly awry.
Yes, I mean, first of all, you put your foot on the brake pedal just to make sure the wheel doesn't rotate, but there is back to this lead battle, and these two drivers, I suspect, will stay out until the pit stop window is virtually going to close. But Jan Helen has done a sterling job, still just under a half a second. A lot more difficult to make up that half second than the previous 1.5 or almost 2 seconds he has made up over the previous laps. So again, he's in that zone where the aerodynamic wash coming from the rear of the Mercedes will start to interfere. In particular, in a corner here, like the carousel, where you really want to hold the nose of the car in as tight as possible.
This is the battle for the overall lead, the Pro-Am lead as well. The pros hanging in these cars as long as they can, but that window is about to come closed. And I do believe that these teams are setting up to bring their drivers in for the pit stops. So all eyes on the pit lane here. While I have a moment, did want to note that the K-Pax Racing pit stops were nearly picture perfect, just a fraction of a second in both cases over the minimum delta, which is right where you want to be. Vesko Kozarov has finally given way to Jeff Burton. They have returned to the track, but they sat in the pit lane for 3 minutes and 21 seconds. Very costly indeed. And here come the overall leaders now. Colin Brown and Jan Halen, DXDT versus Wright Motorsports in the pit lane. It'll be coming there shortly. Just up ahead, you see the Compass Racing car also making a return to the pit lane for the second time after an unscheduled stop earlier. Waiting for these cars to make their way to their respective crews. Not much gap between the two. They've got this one bend to negotiate before they reach their side of the pit lane. And there comes Jan Halen. He'll be giving over to Fred Pordad. And we've got Colin Brown set to give way to George Kurtz, and Amanda is there.
Well, as you guys see, the CrowdStrike Mercedes has made its way into the pits. We talked to George Kurtz ahead of this driving change, and he saw how crucial this would be. But 3 major things are going to happen during this pit stop, guys. The driver change, of course. 4 new Pirelli Swicks are going to go on that Mercedes AMG, and the refuel. The minimum 87 seconds happens on this pit stop. Teams like to hit that mark as close as possible.
Want to cut it as close as you can, but you can't go under. That's when penalties happen. This is the crucial car to watch. Can K-Pax cycle to the lead through these pit stops by short pitting? That is the lead K-Pax car. Andrea Caldarelli behind the wheel, coming around. Not sure where the other two Pro-Am cars were. There they are, just leaving. So K-Pax pulling out a quick one in the pit lane, John, and they jump from 3rd and 4th to 1st and 2nd.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. And in fact, looking at Andrea Caldarelli, he has set a very, very quick lap. Well, his last laps have been all in the middle to high, 1 minute 38 seconds. So this is what I expect from Andrea Caldarelli. He is in the car. He's maxing the car's performance. He is now effectively the lead because we're still waiting for the number 4 Mercedes to cycle through, and that will then fall back behind, I believe, certainly the one of the 2 K-Packs, and most likely the second with Corey Lewis behind the wheel of the number 6. But Andrea Caldarelli doing what Andrea Caldarelli, we know, does in memoriam, just goes quick in that Lamborghini.
Well, the advantage of fresh tires and clean track, while the 2 Pro-Am cars battled amongst themselves on older tires. They lost lap time while doing that, and that allowed K-Packs to jump to the front. George Kurtz now installed in the 04 car, and it's time to see what he's made of. He's going to have a lot of pressure from the reigning AM champion in this championship, Fred Pordat.
Well, the gap between the Mercedes and the Porsche has clearly extended as a consequence of the pit stops that they've both made. Interesting to see whether Pordat can run down George Kurtz. George Kurtz, I thought, did an outstanding job yesterday until he was tagged, but also in the TC event earlier in the day. So there is the lead, or what will be in effect, it is now the lead Lamborghini.
And it is a K-Packs Racing 1-2 at the front of this field following the pit stops. Andrea Caldarelli is showing the way.
Today's coverage is brought to you in partnership with Acura, Ferrari, and Lamborghini.
Impressive pit work from the K-Packs Racing crew. It's something they've been known for over the years. Since pit stops were introduced to this championship a few years ago, they emerged at the top as one of the best prepared teams and really knew how to take advantage of the pit lane, not just quick stops, but also the strategy element of it as well. And I think, John, they probably honed those skills even more racing in the GT World Challenge Europe Endurance Cup last year. Really stiff competition from some teams that have extensive experience with SRO-style pit stops. That's a real challenge that I'm sure they learned from.
Yes, I mean, you have to hit your marks precisely. It's a metronomic, it's almost like a choreographed ballet. But as we look at Taylor Hagler behind the wheel of the Acura, just to mention, on that last lap, Corey Lewis in the second place, number 6 Lamborghini, lapped actually quicker than Andrea Caldarelli did. That's just been changed once again because Caldarelli has gone a little bit quicker on the 31st lap. But back to the 93, and that currently in 5th place, and that is his 3rd place car in the Pro-Am category.
Oh, and a problem here for the 63 car. That's David Askew, I believe, has taken over from Ryan Dial. Ryan gave that car a very good run early, and there is some serious damage to the left front. Yes. Let's take a look at this.
I don't know, as a wheel has come off or looking to find the car. That is the Aston Martin we're looking at. There's the, okay, it's reversing back onto the racetrack. What happened up at the exit of turn 7? But certainly you can see a lot of left front bodywork damage to the 63 Mercedes, and that's going to be another visit into the pit lane, and it'll take a while to repair. The inner lining of the left front bodywork is dragging, hanging out of the wheel arch. And as the wheel it is rotating. So what went wrong? It was on the exit of 7A.
Another disappointing result, it appears, for the Askew-Dial combination. Had contact and a penalty yesterday. They were able to recover and finish second in class, but the race never quite went their way from that point on. And here, an unscheduled pit stop and some damage at the front of the car. We'll take a look at that damage there as David Askew brings the Mercedes to the attention of the DXDT crew. Problems for DXDT Racing specifically. The car shared by David Askew and Ryan Dial. Left front damage of some kind. That car was off the track and made contact, it appeared, maybe just light contact with the wall on this previous lap, John, and immediately made the way to pit lane.
Yeah, something occurred up at turn 7 or 7A, and that was responsible for the 63, David Askew, behind the wheel, getting into trouble. He had to make that pit stop to remove it's an inner lining in the front guard of the Mercedes, so the team pulled that away and they waved Askew back out onto the racetrack. But a lot of time lost and a disappointment. That was a car that was certainly set up for a top 6 finish from the performance that we'd seen in the first part of this race.
Let's reset the running order just a moment. The pit stops allowed K-Pax Racing to cycle to the front. They now lead at 1-2. It is the number 3 car that won yesterday in the hands of Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper out in front. Corey Lewis runs second in the sister car. Then comes George Kurtz in the first of the Pro-Am cars. 7 seconds behind Fred Portad, then Taylor Hagler. Aaron Vogel running in the 6th spot, 4th in class, as we see Rodrigo Salas making a pass of JC Sada. That is for position, not in class. Sada in the AM class Ferrari, but it is for 11th overall. And this is a recovery drive now for Compass Racing after an unscheduled pit stop earlier in the race.
Yeah, Rodrigo Salas made a clean pass up the hill, getting ahead of the Ferrari. There was really little response or challenge from the Ferrari, but they're racing in different categories. The Ferrari is in the AM category. This is a Pro-Am, I'm going to call it a Honda Acura NSX. So if you're not fighting an inter-category battle, let it go. There's no point in having a war with a car that's not in your category. The Ferrari has got nobody to beat but itself, and they will continue to drive around, keep out of trouble, and they will take their class victory.
And Jean-Claude Sada had a pretty heavy crash earlier in the weekend. Right in this part of the racetrack, you'll notice the right-hand door is still in the bare carbon. This car was beat up following that, and all credit to the AF Corsa team for getting it repaired and ready to go back on the track. Always difficult to put an accident like that behind you, but that's exactly what JC Sada has been able to do. George Kurtz has seen his lead in Pro-Am extend up to over 9, nearly 10 seconds now, really settling into a nice rhythm, and his co-driver Colin Brown is with Amanda.
Well, Colin, throughout the broadcast, we've talked about the wacky start at the beginning of the race. From your perspective, what did you experience?
Yeah, I really wasn't sure what was going on because he was slowing down all the way to sort of that restart zone where we're supposed to go. And then when the green flag came out, he put the brakes on. So I wasn't really sure what happened, but just trying to follow the rules from my standpoint. And obviously proud of these guys at CrowdStrike DXDT. It's been a tough weekend for us, sort of ups and downs. George has been, doing a great job in the GT America class, winning both of those races. And we've had speed in this car. Obviously had an incident at the start yesterday, but today was great. Really just proud of these guys. Cool to have some folks from CrowdStrike out, and hopefully we can keep this going and get the deal done at the end of the race here.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Colin Brown, extremely experienced in all kinds of racing. He's raced GT cars and prototypes, NASCAR even on the resume. He actually has the record for the fastest lap ever on the Daytona Oval. It was done in a prototype, 222.9 miles per hour average around the 2.5-mile oval. John, that is fast.
Bring a tear to your eye or two, I can assure you of that. Reminds me of the late, great Mark Donoghue going to Talladega with one of those wonderful Porsche 91730s and doing something similar. Talking from way back in the early part of the 1970s. George Kurtz, we were talking about him, and Colin Brown, his co-driver. He's pretty much got that Pro-Am position sewn up comfortably in third place with a nice 13.1 second gap, and it's extending by 2 to 3 seconds a lap over the second place Pro-Am Porsche. Fred Purdad can't match the pace, and understandably so, of Jan Halen, who did a great opening stint in the 20 Porsche.
Top speeds at overall top speed, courtesy of Race Vision, powered by AWS. Michael Dinan in the BMW at the front of that shot, trying not to go a lap down to the overall leader, Andrea Caldarelli. Dinan taking over for Robert Foley, who started this race. Just up the road from Dynan is Ziad Gondor, doing a great job in the TR3 Racing Lamborghini. They had a crash on the opening lap yesterday, did not complete a lap, and has bounced back nicely. Here comes the Lamborghini to the inside of the BMW to put him a lap down. That was a little bit closer than you'd like to see, right, if you're a leader coming through the lap traffic?
That's always going to be the difficulty when you come into the lap traffic and down into turn 4. It's a downhill break. BMW may not have been aware that Caldarelli had committed, but he did see the Lamborghini up the inside. He gave Caldarelli working room. That was good driving from Dinan. So, again, different categories. They're not in the same battle. Let the Lamborghini go. Of course, no driver wants to go a lap down in a race if you can avoid it, but different categories, different day, and all you can do is just continue doing the best you can for your team. Currently, Dinan is a pro. Actually, he is in the pro car as well, I should say. The BMW is at one of the 4 pro entries, but down in 9th place.
And Michael Dynan doesn't have the experience of a lot of the pros, especially in the Lamborghini lineups. This is his first season racing in GT3 cars, as we see Gondor pull off and into the pit lane. So something wrong with that TR3 car, just as we were commenting on how nice it was to see that they were having a good run after the difficulties yesterday. A drive-through penalty for a pit lane violation.
Yeah, those are the kind of errors. Now, they're not intentional, that is for sure. But one tiny infringement in a pit lane can penalise you with a drive-through penalty. It will destroy your race. And that's what you have to. The devil is in the detail, and one little mistake costs a lot of time.
It's too bad for a veteran team that's been running in the series for some time, but they'll learn from it and come back even stronger. It's a 1-2 for K-Pax Racing and Lamborghini. The Bulls are on parade. Andrea Caldarelli pacing this field. Corey Lewis in second. Looking to lap Michael Dynan in the Turner BMW just up the road. Won a lot of races last year in GT4, but it is a big step to GT3, right?
Yes, I mean, the GT4 car is very much aligned to the car that you would buy in your BMW, your Lamborghini friendly dealer. Again, Dynan does a very good job in allowing Corey Lewis to go through, stays on the left. The racetrack recognises that this is the second place race car, lapping much more quickly. And that's what good driving is. There is a thing called etiquette on the racetrack. Sometimes you wonder, did people leave it at home when they get into a race car? But that was a good example of good driver etiquette from Michael Dynan.
Check it in on this fight here. It's Askew in the lead Mercedes, but down a lap. Remember, they had the problem a moment ago and came to pit lane. Behind is Taylor Hagler, who has taken over the reins of the Racer's Edge Acura. Taylor making a big step. We talked about how big of a step it is from GT4 to GT3. How about coming from a front-wheel drive touring car, a little bit light on the downforce, to a GT3 beast like this?
Well, front-wheel drive racing cars are, to me, an oddity. A racing car should be driven by the rear wheels, but of course touring cars are dominated by front-wheel drive. It is a big transition, but in fairness, you couldn't wish to get into a nicer race car than the Acura NSX. It is, as I mentioned earlier, it is a car that was essentially designed with racing in mind and then adapted to road use, which means that all the components in the car are effectively designed with racing in mind.
And it's been very successful, especially in its Evo package right now. Taylor Hagler running third in class, 5th overall in her first weekend racing in a GT3 car. John Maraki, the team owner, he really likes to shepherd along young talent, and there's some pride at stake for him watching these 2 young drivers he's got, watching them get up to speed. As a mentor in racing, nothing better than seeing a young driver start to figure it out.
Yes, it is, and Taylor's doing a very good job indeed, chasing as hard as she can. She's within a second or so of the Mercedes, and coming through carousel, looks like she's going to run the Mercedes down. too far back to have a pop up into turn 7, but the intention is written all across her face.
And this is not for position. This is a lap car up ahead of Taylor Hagler, but any experience she can gain passing a fellow GT3 car is something she can carry forward. Currently third in class in the Racer's Edge Acura NSX GT3 Evo. Watching Taylor Hagler hounding David Askew. Had that problem a few laps ago. Had to come to pit lane for that problem. And as we do, it's now jump ahead to the lead car. Andrea Caldarelli behind the wheel. It was Jordan Pepper who started, and Amanda has caught up with the South African ace.
Well, I'm sure Jordan is happy to see that number 3 Lambo back in the lead position. And Jordan, as we go back to the start of the race, from your first-hand perspective, what happened?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not quite sure. I had a similar issue I felt yesterday at the restart where I went to power and for some reason the car just cut out. So we think it's that, but until we get confirmation, look at data afterwards, we're not so sure. But big heads up to Giovanni. He was right behind me. He did touch me, but he did a great job to avoid me. You know, it could have been quite a nasty crash being right up front there. It could have been like the whole field out, you know. So it was a bit of a shame. We lost the lead, managed to fight back to third, and then just, yeah, it's so hard to pass here, especially when the Porsche and the Merc started on new tires. They drove away quite quickly at the beginning, and I had to chase after them and probably spent up all my tires doing so. So just hung in there, and then, yeah, we obviously jumped them in the stop.
When the pit window opened, you came in immediately. What was the strategy behind that?
Yeah, exactly. So like I said, they started on new tires with their pro drivers, and for us it was quite known if we could find a gap in the strategy. The team found that gap and we put it in early new tires, and we just basically undercut them. So it worked out perfectly. We got ahead, and that's obviously what got us to P1 and P2, and hopefully we can bring it home.
You heard Jordan reference the fact that the competition started on new tires. You might wonder, well, why didn't they? But there are strict rules about the number of tire sets available to teams over the course of a weekend, and figuring out when to implement those sticker tires. That's a big part of race strategy these days.
Indeed it is, and it's interesting that the Pro-Am cars that ended up leading the race started on fresh tires, and understandably they are in the Pro-Am category, and let the pros use the new tire. Just without any comment, they would get more out of the tire.
And as we were away, we've seen now Erin Vogel run down Taylor Hagler. We talked about Taylor making her GT3 debut. Same for Erin in this championship, driving for DXDT Racing in the red and purple Mercedes towards the back there. That's the one. And she has run down Taylor Hagler, who I have to believe is being held up a moment by a DXDT Racing car, David Askew. I'm not going to say anything's being done untoward here, but if David can run his line and Taylor can't find a way by, and that happens to help Erin catch up, I think everyone at DXTT Racing would be all right with that.
Well, guys, it is called motor racing. It's not driving a race car around a racetrack. So we are here racing. And David Askew is doing his bit and doing as best he can to keep the Acura behind him. But it'll be interesting to see the outcome of this battle between Vogel in the second of the Mercedes and the Acura, because it is going to be Taylor Hagler. She is effectively the meat in the Mercedes-Benz sandwich, looking to go down the outside, coming into the chicane. There's never the best line to take, because you're going to be slightly compromised, and that could have given Vogel an opportunity to move down the inside, but things have remained status quo. Now Askew's going defensive, coming down into turn 11. So he's gone wide. I think he will let certainly the Acura get through. Now, whether that was intentional or not, I'm not sure, but I suspect it may have been, let's let the quicker car go through, and now it'll be a question of whether Vogel will also be given the opportunity. Erin Vogel in the purple and red Mercedes, she will look for the same kind of opportunity that was given to Taylor Hagler.
And you'd think it would be coming. That is her team owner just up the road ahead of her. It's not stopping her from flashing those headlights, though. Drivers like to do that to make sure the car in front of them knows that they're there. But do you think it really makes much of a difference?
what you want to do is get in the head of the driver of the car ahead of you. You want to move your car around, force the driver to keep looking in the door mirrors on either side of the mirror, up the inside into carousel. So Aaron Vogel has done a very good job, assisted by David Askew by staying a car width and a bit wide in the carousel. So that was a nicely orchestrated pass. Neither car effectively lost anything in terms of lap times, but Aaron Vogel has got through, and then she will be able to continue her pursuit of the 93 Acura Taylor Hagler, who hoped to maybe make or stretch that advantage fractionally. Well, she has done so, but I think that Mercedes Aaron Vogel is going to be on the tail of the Acura probably within the next lap, maybe 2 laps.
We'll keep a close eye on that as Aaron gets closer to Taylor. That is the final podium spot in the Pro-Am class up for grabs. One of the best battles on the track at the moment. Andrea Caldarelli leads to the tune of 7.8 seconds over Corey Lewis. George Kurtz runs in 3rd overall. He's the leader in the Pro-Am category. Fred Pordad chasing him. And then it's that Hagler-Vogel battle we were looking at a moment ago. Nevertheless, at the front of the field, it's still all K-Pax Racing. The local team is looking very strong in their return to North America.
Today's coverage is brought to you in partnership with Optima, Motul, and Skip Barber.
Another battle on track here. Rodrigo Salles, Ziad Gondor. This is for position, as a matter of fact. This is for 9th. So these are both cars that had to make unscheduled pit stops and are trying to salvage some kind of a result. Salles in the Compass Racing Acura, chasing down Gondor in the TR3 Racing Lamborghini Huracan GT3 Evo. Back to the Aaron Vogel Taylor Hagler battle. And this is fascinating because these are 2 drivers without a ton of experience at this level, but learning every single lap, and they're going to be testing each other on just what they've learned here over the final 17 minutes.
Well, what you're going to see is how do you manage defense on the one hand, on the other hand, how do you manage an attack on the car directly ahead of. So this is going to be an education. It's almost a university of motor racing. Both drivers will come out of this race, 17 and a half minutes remaining, and they will be the better competitors because the pair of them are going at it.
Aaron Vogel a year ago teamed with Michael Cooper. You see him there watching on. They raced in Pirelli GT4 America in the Sprint X category in a McLaren 570S GT4. A big switch, not just from GT4 to GT3, but the McLaren, a very different platform than the Mercedes. It would have been a bit more straightforward, theoretically, moving to something like the Acura. That mid-engine layout is definitely different than what the Mercedes has in store. But Aaron's been a quick study and looking very strong. She's been closing in.
Yes, and again, overall of the cars, the Acura is a great race car. The Mercedes is arguably the car that is the more, maybe call it easy for either an experienced or a lesser experienced competitor to adapt to and get to the car's maximum performance window. And Aaron Vogel has closed down yet again as the cars exit out of turn 7A and begin the return leg all the way down to the chicane. So the gap on the previous lap was 0.6 of a second, and it's, I suppose you might say, if it's 1/10 of a second or less, that's about the maximum. So great defense from Taylor Hagler, great attack from Vogel to see whether either of these 2 cars can actually get any closer.
These 2 are putting on a great show for us. They've got 15 minutes still to settle it. The final step of the Pro-Am podium up for grabs, and it's Taylor Hagler who holds it for the moment over Aaron Vogel. Andrea Caldarelli continues to lead over his teammate Corey Lewis by 7.7 seconds, but this battle rages on. Top speeds overall in the Pro-Am class, so overall around the track, Pro-Am class cars, and Taylor Hagler at the top of that list, 137.9 miles per hour. Let's go down to pit lane. Amanda has an update for us.
Well, as we've been talking about, it is Taylor Hagler's rookie debut. Therefore, early seat time for the rookie has snuck by Racer's Edge to see if they're talking her through this defense. They told me that, yes, they are. Actually, her coach, Ryan Eversley, he races in the Pirelli GT4 class. He is in her ear currently, as well as Chief Engineer Jim Patton. They are pulling back a little bit and let Taylor do her thing, but she is being coached through this moment.
Ryan Eversley, part of the HPD GT3 Driver Academy in the coaching role. So he's been working with them for a while, and around goes Vogel in that pursuit.
Yes, that was an error on exit of turn 7A, and that will be a relief for Taylor Hagler to know that the Mercedes is now, momentarily anyway, out of contention. But to go back to the idea that a driver coach might be coaching Taylor Hagler as she drives around this Sonoma Raceway racetrack, there's a limit to what a driver can accept in terms of their concentration and focus on simply driving the car. So you might just speak to them. Certainly on the pit straight would be the only part of the racetrack I would consider it was wise to speak to your driver. Otherwise, it's just too much input and you could end up causing confusion. But we don't know how much she is being coached. But certainly this part of the racetrack is the only part I would consider it would be appropriate to do so.
We see Andrea Caldarelli there in the K-Panks Racing number 3 car, coming around, lapping some of this field. Not so far behind that battle between Vogel and Hagler. The good news for Aaron is that she did not have much in the way of close pursuit, so it was a relatively harmless spin. It didn't cost her any positions, but it did, at least for now, cost her the opportunity, perhaps, for that 3rd spot in Pro-Am. And she was so close to just a moment ago. How do you put that behind you, John? A spin like that, a mistake like that, and resume with a charge to the finish?
Well, apart from the frustration that you would feel at the moment that you realized you'd lost control of your car, you've just got to put that out of your thoughts, refocus, and move forward. She's dropped back to 7.1 seconds behind Taylor Hagler, and we've got 12 minutes of this race remaining, so you're looking at taking about 3/4 of a second per lap in the remaining time just to get it back to the tail of the Acura. That's a big ask. But, there's lots of factors that can come into play. Luckily, I should say, we've not had any incident on racetrack. We've not seen the need to have a full course yellow or a safety car intervention. That would be the kind of situation that would work, certainly for Aaron Vogel, more favorably than it would work for Taylor Hagler.
That was an interesting graphic, though. Corey Lewis compared to Andrea Caldarelli. That last lap, Lewis took over a second out of the lead. Caldarelli, for what it's worth, was in some lap traffic, so I suspect that had something to do with it. But nevertheless, Corey Lewis pushing hard. He's the only driver out of the 4 K-Pax Racing drivers who had ever raced here prior to this weekend, but it was something like 12 years ago. And so he was not sure how much of that really carried over. George Kurtz leading in Pro-Am. Fred Pordat just behind. Tell you what, Jan Halen really impressed in this car early in this race. But George Kurtz, since he's gotten in, he's given no opportunity for Fred to claw into his deficit, and George has looked very stout behind the wheel.
I think that's been a very good partnership, Colin Brown and George Kurtz in a Pro-Am category. Interestingly, when Jan Halen was behind the wheel of this Porsche early in the first opening stint, the car recorded the fastest race lap, and that lap has stood all the way through with just 11 minutes of this race remaining. So the Porsche had pace. Now, certainly that was undoubtedly maybe helped. They may have chosen to go on to a brand new set of tyres for that opening stint to give Halen the opportunity. We know that they did so on the Mercedes with Colin Brown, and that's the benefit that you get. You get that fast lap in early, and then as the race progresses, depending on tyre availability, the best of the rest tyres of your tyres will have gone onto the Porsche and onto the number 4 Mercedes.
Just 10 minutes and change remaining in this race. There's Taylor Hagler making her way around Frank Gannett, running in the Ian Lacey Racing Aston Martin. That team still very much getting their heads around the new car. Haven't had it for very long. ran a couple of Mustangs in Pirelli GT4 America a year ago, and so a lot to learn when you switch manufacturers and switch classes, stepping up to the big show here in Fanatec GT World Challenge America. Look at this. Taylor Hagler also reeling in Fred Pordat just a little bit. She is currently 7 seconds behind, so that's a tall order, but if they're telling her you're catching him, that might be the motivation she needs.
Well, she's had personal best sector times on the current situation, current lap she's on. So that's very good driving indeed from Taylor Hagler, considering we're now coming to near the conclusion of this event.
9.5 minutes remaining. 1-2 for the second day in a row for K-Pax Racing. Can anyone upset the apple cart? We'll find out as Andrea Caldarelli makes his way around Sonoma Raceway. To the wire here, John, and K-Pax didn't dominate this race in quite the same way as they did yesterday. Lost the lead at the start, as we've chronicled. Dropped back to third and fourth, but the pit strategy put them back out in front, and the second half of this race looks a lot like what we saw yesterday.
Very much so, but again, just looking at timing and scoring, Corey Lewis in second place has got the gap down from what was a 6-second gap down to 4.5 seconds. Now, maybe there's the reason, the traffic that Lewis is now going to have to deal with. That probably was the factor that saw that 6.5 second gap, first to second, become a 4.5 second gap. And now Lewis, well, it's not so much overtaking these two Mercedes, it's whereabouts on the racetrack he's going to catch up with them. Up behind now, Erin Vogel in the purple and red. Mercedes will see how generous she is to second place Lamborghini of Corey Lewis.
Now, she's certainly trying to push to recover from her mistake, but you're right. How do you deal with this traffic? This is something she's pretty new to. That was close. It definitely held Corey Lewis up. And she's got some pressure behind. That is for position right behind there. Russell Ward in the Windward Racing car. Coming back up through the field. Two different generations of this Mercedes-AMG GT3. The Evo in front and the older version behind. Both very competent, as we're seeing. Interesting to see that the Windward team, John, electing to run the older generation car.
Well, maybe in the opening round, just use what you know and then move forward with the Evo. Interestingly, with Erin, now she's under pressure from the 33 Mercedes, but I wasn't convinced that she was committed to letting the Lamborghini go through in turn 4. And I think, likewise, Corey Lewis found himself in a position where he had a heart-in-the-mouth moment, thinking, oh, is the Mercedes going to give me the ground, or are we going to come in contact? Fortunately, space was given, provided, but Erin Vogel, I don't think, gave it up too happily.
No, certainly not. She's going to fight this one to the bitter end for sure, trying to fend off Russell Ward for fourth in the Pro-Am class. Andrea Caldarelli leads Corey Lewis. The gap now 6.7 seconds. George Kurtz third overall, leading in the Pro-Am class. Fred Pordat runs second in Pro-Am with Taylor Hagler third. The best battle on the track, though, is this one. It's for fourth in Pro-Am. Russell Ward in the Windward Racing Mercedes taking a look up the inside of Erin Vogel, trying to grab that spot away. Has to back out of it.
Wisely so, because Erin Vogel was not going to concede a position, a track position, to Russell Ward. And Ward, he made the attempt, but he gave himself sufficient space to know that if he saw the door closing, it wasn't going to close on him. So he lives to fight another corner, another lap, or just under 6 minutes of this race remaining. And that's good racing between the two competitors, Erin Vogel and Russell Ward. Well, not quite identical, but very closely specified or specification Mercedes AMG GT3s.
Erin Vogel in the purple Mercedes, it's the silver Mercedes of Russell Ward. The fight is for fourth in Pro-Am. It's also the sixth position in the overall running order. When Ward backed out of it, he lost a lot of ground, but it hasn't taken him much time to get it back. On the power here through turn 10 and the run to turn 11. Taking a look to the inside. Vogel a bit defensive, compromising the entrance to the corner. Can Russell Ward get a run out to perhaps challenge Vogel up the hill once again?
Well, Erin Vogel did go defensive, but she also managed to get the Mercedes slowed down and stopped to make her entry into that long 180-degree turn 11 and made a good exit. So very good driving, very good defensive driving. So Russell Ward's going to think, well, I've had a couple of looks, certainly one big look coming into turn 4 and a look going into turn 11. Here we go again. So he's not close enough this time. Just be patient. You've got 4.5 minutes remaining. That's going to be another couple of laps before the checkered flag brings this race to a conclusion.
It looks like Erin remembered that Russell made that move in turn 4. She again took a defensive line that time to dissuade him from trying it again. How about this run out of the carousel? What does Russell Ward have in that Mercedes? Remember, this is the Daytona 24 winning team with Russell part of that driver lineup, so he's riding high at the moment. And now pushing very hard through 7A.
The car, Russell Ward's car, didn't look quite as, I would say, grounded as Erin Vogel's did. The back end looked like it was moving around fractionally, maybe indicating that rear tire wear, right rear tire wear, might be greater than that of the 19 Erin Vogel. So that will be a further compromise that Russell Ward's got to build and work around. He's not close enough now coming through the run down into turn 11 to give any thought about dabbing down the inside. So takes the left-hand entry, then makes the late cut back to try and get a better exit. Use the drive off that long 180-degree corner through turn 12, cross, start, finish line. 3 minutes 20 to go. They'll get this lap and one more before the flag comes out.
No time running out for Russell Ward to make this move. Time is the ally of Erin Vogel for the moment, and as a consequence, the aggression level starting to ramp up. Russell Ward knows if he's going to get it done, he's got to do it soon. This man, Andrea Caldarelli, has been picture perfect all weekend long. Had a pole for race 1. Dominant performance in that race from pole. Has turned in a stirring second stint in this race as well, coming through to lap Ziad Gondor in the TR3 Racing Ferrari and catching Fred Pordat in the 4th place overall car from Wright Motorsports in the 2nd place car in Pro-Am.
One thing Andrea Caldarelli will be aware of is he's competing here for the first time to win a raceway, but principally against drivers and competitors he has never seen previously, and therefore he's not familiar with their on track. What do? Are they consistent? Are they inconsistent? Here's a great drive. George Kurt's been on it all weekend, dominated Pro-Am along with Colin Brown in 3rd place, very comfortably indeed.
Big bounce back for them. They were spun by their team car lap 1 of race 1 yesterday and never quite recovered. This would be win number 3 for George on the weekend. He has swept the weekend in GT America powered by AWS competition. And now here in Fanatec GT World Challenge America powered by AWS. He's fulfilling his end of the bargain, no question about that, after Colin Brown was really strong. And come to think of it, the end of Colin's stint where he was holding off Jan Halen, that was a crucial moment in hindsight because it allowed George to come out with the lead, and he's only extended it from there.
Yes, I mean, George has had a very, very good run, and I've been impressed by what he's done all through the weekend, and he's just capitalized on getting out ahead of the 20 Porsche. So it's been, again, a relatively lonely drive, other than maybe catching some of the back markers and finding his way through without getting into contact as we go back to race leader coming out of the carousel, the run up into, and we look at the Ferrari, Jean-Claude Sada, the AM car in this event, and there is the race leader just closing in as they come through turn 7A.
Now for this team, just finishing these 2 races is a major success after the heavy incident they had early in the weekend. It was great, first of all, that JC was okay. Like I said, it was a massive contact. That car was not in a good way afterwards, and for them, just logging the laps, getting more experience as a driving pair, him and Conrad Grunwald, I think they'll be quite pleased, even if the results don't look great. And they can carry this forward to the rest of the year.
And there was an example of Andrea Caldarelli being uncertain because he recognized the Ferrari was an AM entry. Coming into the chicane, he wasn't certain as to what the driver Sada was going to do, and there was almost a sort of a two-step, well, after you, Andrea, no, after you, Jean-Claude. Slight confusion, they've sorted it out, but as I mentioned earlier, those are the kind of areas for someone like Caldarelli with his experience and skill and out-and-out success. He's having to learn not a racetrack, he's having to learn the competitors he's going to compete against this year.
And he had the luxury of a 5-second gap to second place as he came into that situation, so he could afford to do that two-step, as you so adeptly put it. This is still the best battle on the track. It rages on as the white flag comes out. We're on the final lap here. Aaron Vogel, Russell Ward. Russell has been very strong here. Vogel, commensurate in her defense. And runs a little bit wide there. This is about as close as we've seen Ward through this part of the track. Can he get that run through the carousel?
Well, he can't get it done on the entry to the carousel. His car looked the less stable of the two Mercedes a couple of laps ago on the exit. So what he is going to try and do is get a run up this slight incline up into turn 7 and 7A, but not close enough. I mean, he runs up onto the rear, under the rear wing almost as we go back to our race leader.
2 more chances for him to try and make that move. The chicane, and then the corner that Andrea Caldarelli is coming up towards right here, the hairpin of turn number 11. What a return to SRO America competition it has been for K-Pax Racing. For the second straight day, the number 3 Lamborghini Huracan GT3, Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper pick up the win, sweeping the weekend at Sonoma Raceway. And for the second straight day, second place goes to Corey Lewis and Giovanni Venturini. The battle here, Ward got to the inside and gets the job done, but Vogel coming back to the inside. This is for 4th in Pro-Am. At the line, photo finish, Aaron Vogel holds off Russell Ward and will take home a hard-fought 4th in the Pro-Am class. Winner in Pro-Am right here. George Kurtz still has not taken the checkered flag. A little less drama in his run to the checkers, John.
Yes, he's had a very nice run, and all courtesy of Colin Brown in the start when there was confusion. I don't know what happened to Jordan Pepper. We still wait for further explanation, and the contact that we did note immediately it occurred when the green Lamborghini tagged the back of the black one, and it was almost about to go, I can't even think of the word I want to use. It could have been very bad indeed, but fortunately it all tidied up, and this car has been outstanding, and both drivers have done an outstanding job in the Pro-Am category.
They were second in the Pro-Am Championship last year. A win will be very helpful for them in pursuit of that coveted championship. Congratulations to Colin Brown and George Kurtz for DXDT Racing, winners in Pro-Am in race 2 of the season for GT World Challenge America. Oh my goodness, John, what a finish we had. That fight between Ward and Vogel, that's as good as it gets. Take us through what you saw as those two went side by side for the final few corners.
Well, it looked like Russell Ward got it done, but he was obviously very tight on the inside of turn 11, and it gave the opportunity for Vogel to really hang alongside and get a better drive off turn 11, and therefore when she came to turn 12, she was on the inside of turn 12, had a shorter distance to travel to the checkered flag, and managed to take that 6th place that Russell Ward, having done so much on that final lap, thought he had probably got all done and dusted, and then it was taken away from him just simply because he had to take the long way around turn 12, and that handed it to Aaron Vogel. So great drive by both drivers. Aaron Vogel impressed me greatly by her ability to withstand extreme pressure from Russell Ward for a considerable part of this race.
And I need to issue a mea culpa. I forgot that Ward car is an all-pro entry, so it was not a battle for class position after all. Nevertheless, it was Vogel holding off for 6th overall. We look at the CrowdStrike fastest lap. Jan Halen able to log that early on in this race, a 138.176 for him. Fastest lap of the race. That Porsche really was flying early on, John.
Yes, and Jan Halen used the benefit of the new set of tyres. He did drop back initially, and the gap was up, I think, 3 seconds, maybe up to 4 seconds. But then in the second part of that opening stint, came back really strongly against Colin Brown. And all of a sudden, Brown found himself, having had a very relaxed opening stint, having to become defensive against the Porsche.
Indeed. And that held both of them up, I think, at the end of that first stint. And also the fact that they ran long on older tires that helped K-Pax with their strategy. And they're afforded a bit more flexibility with the All-Pro lineup. They were able to take advantage of that and get their cars back to the front. And that's where they finished with a second consecutive 1-2 finish. K-Pax Racing in victory lane on home turf. This crew, this team, based right here at Sonoma Raceway. As we take a look at the unofficial race results, Jordan Pepper, Andrea Caldarelli take the overall win, holding off their teammates for the second straight day, Corey Lewis and Giovanni Venturini. George Kurtz, Colin Brown, the winners in Pro-Am, also on the overall podium. Fred Pordat and Jan Halen, a winner yesterday, second in Pro-Am today. Dakota Dickerson, Taylor Hagler, their first podiums in GT World Challenge America. Aaron Vogel did win out in that duel with Russell Ward. I must say, it was actually not a class battle after all. It was a Pro-Am car in Vogel holding off a Pro car in Ward. So Vogel and Cooper fourth in Pro-Am, Ward and Ellis third in Pro. And of course, our winner in the AM category, the lone entry this weekend, but we expect more in the future. The AF Corsa car, JC Sada, Conrad Grunwald, overcoming a heavy accident earlier in the weekend. There you see the final results. With Lamborghini up at the top. Quite a return to this championship and a debut, actually, for the GT3 Evo version of the Huracan. Had not raced in SRO America before, and it's undefeated. Why don't we go down to pit lane and hear from some of our winners with Amanda Busick.
Oh, and you talk about dominance here to open up the weekend in the Fanatec GT World Challenge powered by AWS here season. And Jordan, I'm going to start with you. When you look at this dominance, what does that tell your competitors?
Yeah, obviously it just shows that the team's obviously done their homework. You know, it was quite a late deal switching to Lamborghini, but incredible effort by the whole Lamborghini Squadra Corsa to supply the team not only with amazing drivers to drive with, but obviously a brilliant car that was faultless from the get-go. The first time we put it down for testing, it was just going like a bullet, and we shone. So hopefully it gets a bit more challenging. Obviously that race already, it just shows that the competitors are right there, you know, but we just executed strategy, everything, undercut them when we could with the new tires, like I said, and just Andrea brought it home, which is awesome.
And as George just said, Andrea, you brought it home and saw the checkered Friday here in SRO America for the first time. Describe that moment.
Yeah, obviously it's a really nice moment. We just had a chat before the start of the race, and you asked me how was to bring back the car and the checkered flag, and it feels great. I think it's all the team deserved 1-2, and today it's a great day to celebrate the, as Jordan say, all the team effort. So that was good.
Congratulations.
Thanks, guys.
Great performance from both drivers, as we saw Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper sweep the weekend. Here are your manufacturers' points coming out of this weekend. Mercedes-AMG holding down the top spot. Porsche and Lamborghini second and third. BMW, Ferrari fourth and fifth. These are the GT World Challenge points as well, leaving this weekend at Sonoma Raceway. One thing to go back to, John, with Jordan Pepper, not just a team debut, but also a Lamborghini debut this weekend. He's been running Bentleys the last couple of years. To see him make this transition to the Huracan and do it so seamlessly really speaks volumes to his level of talent.
Well, he's got a wonderful talent. I've always been a fan of Jordan Pepper. The only thing you can say, the only continuity you could maybe mention about the the differences between the Bentley and the Lamborghini is they're all actually owned by the VW Audi group. So there is a tenuous family link. But in terms of the actual cars and their concept and their layout, the Bentley is a mid-engine, front-engine GT car, wonderful car, and has had great success over here in the States with K-Pax, to the Lamborghini, which is a rear-engine, mid-rear-engine, a pure GT car. Both handled quite differently, and it does take a certain amount of time to build your confidence with the equipment, to work your way with the team. Okay, there's no doubt that Jordan knows the team, but he doesn't know the Lamborghini yet.
Back to Victory Circle and Amanda.
Well, there's a lot of people that had a great weekend here in Sonoma, but I'm not sure someone had a better weekend than George Kurtz. And when you think of what you were able to accomplish here in Sonoma, what will be your highlight?
Well, first I got to thank CrowdStrike, DXDT, and this guy right here. Just tremendous weekend. You know, we had some adversity yesterday, but we knew we had the pace, and we put the time and effort in, and we got it done.
Colin, after the miscue of yesterday, how satisfying is it to bounce back from that?
It's great. I mean, obviously, George has been really fast here all weekend, picking up both GTA wins. And, you know, we had good pace all weekend. So we had that incident in yesterday's race and just kind of knew what it was, put it behind us. You know, we had some damage to the car early on. And, you know, we knew we were going to have a good, strong showing today. These guys have been doing a great job getting it fixed up every night. And we keep going fast. So a lot of fun to drive this CrowdStrike car. Cool to get a win in a lot of stuff for kind of a home race for us. So pretty proud.
And thank you, Ross.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
Smiles all around for the DXTT racing team. A big bounce back from that squad after very disappointing results, quite frankly, from race number 1. Here's the Pro-Am points. Fred Portat, Van Halen lead by virtue of their win and second place on the weekend, but Colin Brown, George Kurtz, they're up to second thanks to a strong win here today. Dakota Dickerson, Taylor Hagler fall third. David Askew, Ryan Dial fourth, while Aaron Vogel and Michael Cooper are fifth in the Pro-Am standings. Wrapping up a beautiful day at Sonoma Raceway and a beautiful weekend indeed. A lot of fun and a lot of good racing as well. A great way to get the GT World Challenge America season started. And plenty of highlights here, John, but I think the K-Pax Racing boys are going to be the ones who are looking at those highlights more than anyone else. They played this thing to perfection.
It's what you expect with a top professional team in a professional sport, and a sport at the level that this Fanatec GT World Challenge America, powered by AWS, is going to be all about. And I'm thinking forward now to the next round, which is in the early part of May, at the Circuit of the Americas. Totally different racetrack to here in Sonoma Raceway, and that will play to the advantages and strengths of different brands. It may not be a Lamborghini circuit. It could be any of the other 6 brands that are currently represented in the championship.
That's exactly right. You don't know what the season has in store for us. Headed to Circuit of the Americas next. Not quite sure what the next round of the championship is going to be from there. But let's take a look at the highlights here. That was a crucial moment, and it really turned the race on its head. A problem with the acceleration, apparently, at the start from that Lamborghini, the Jordan Pepper car at the beginning. That allowed the Colin Brown-driven DXDT Mercedes to get to the front, and Jan Halen right behind in the Porsche. Great start as well from Dakota Dickerson all the way up to third in that opening sequence of corners. Also kept his nose clean, which was crucial. Here's the battle. These two cars saw each other a lot. That was Michael Cooper putting some pressure on Philip Ellis. An unscheduled pit stop here for the Compass Racing car, and problems for Reardon Racing on their pit stop proved costly. This was when the race turned, however. K-Pax short-pitted, came in early and used the sticker tires to build an advantage. When the 2 Pro-Am cars pitted later, they were able to come by, took the lead, and were unchallenged for another 1-2 finish. That was Rodrigo Salas passing JC Sada late in the race. This duel was fantastic here for quite some time between a couple of DXDT racing cars. Right there was Vogel behind. She ended up in a great duel with Taylor Hagler, but had this spin that proved to be a bit of a setback. Still able to bounce back and get a solid result just off the podium in Pro-Am. But the weekend belonged to K-Pax Racing. For the second straight day, Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper take the win. Lamborghini 1-2 for the first two races of GT World Challenge America.
Live TV, guys. Let's go. They're losing. Sorry, Amanda. We tried. They're a little.
So we continue with podium ceremonies here at Sonoma Raceway. A lot of happy campers down in that part of the track. This is the most coveted ground in at this racetrack. If you could stand up on this podium, you've done something right, and especially after today, a lot of hard-fought results fighting for the podium throughout the course of this race. John, that champagne, it's going to taste sweet, is it not?
Well, I wonder, is it local?
That's a good question.
Because we're only a few minutes up the road from all the wonderful wineries in Northern California. Nevertheless, it is a very sweet moment for those that will be privileged to get onto the podium and enjoy the success, drink a little of the champagne, or sparkling wine as it could be, because champagne can only be called champagne if it is grown in France.
Expertise on the wine from the one and only John Watson. Appreciated as always. Also appreciate the efforts of Amanda Busick, who has our AM class winners.
And standing by, I have Jean-Claude Sada, who led the effort in Ferrari. And just to get this car back onto track was a big effort for you guys. How pleased are you with this team?
Oh, the team, they're second to none. Of course, they did a magnificent job putting that car back together after our incident, and they spent all night long till 3 in the morning working on it, and we are deeply, deeply grateful to all the guys who did this. It's been a team effort all the way through the weekend. We did very little, Conrad and I. They did most of the work. So thank you, of course.
And Colin, I am hearing that you guys are going to debut a new Ferrari in COTA. How will that help your effort?
Well, I mean, a new car is a new car. We're really looking forward to it. There's nothing wrong with this car. It's in great shape. They did a great job prepping it, but we are looking forward to having some new machinery in COTA.
Congratulations to the AM champions.
JC Sada, Conrad Grunwald, bringing that car home after a difficult start to the weekend. Drivers' Championship in the Pro category, as you'd expect after sweeping the weekend. Andrea Caldarelli and Jordan Pepper hold the top spot by 14 tallies over Corey Lewis and Giovanni Venturini. Michael Dine and Robbie Foley, they're slotted in third. And especially after the setback yesterday for Philip Ellis and Russell Ward, an alternator issue really scuppered their race. They've got some ground to make up, but still plenty of races to do it. And, John, you can't let a difficult start to the season dictate the way the rest of the season plays out.
No, this is now in the record book. It's history. The lessons you learn or go away, analyze what you did from the minute you arrived before practice and qualifying, the 2 races, and look at it and learn from it, and whatever alterations or changes need to be made within the team or within how your drivers approach and prepare for either qualifying or the race. A lot to be learned.
Podium celebrations underway. We've got JC Sada and Conrad Grunwald there in the middle, the AM class winners. And to the left, third place in Pro-Am, Taylor Hagler and Dakota Dickerson. It'll be Taylor for the full season for that Racer's Edge car. Dakota will be replaced off and on. He's splitting that seat effectively with Jacob Abel, another graduate of the HPD GT3 Academy. And they're the happy winners in Pro-Am. Colin Brown and his pupil, they've been working together for a number of years now. George Kurtz, 3 wins on the weekend between 2 championships. This is a weekend that George Kurtz is going to be very pleased with.
Great-looking podium that is.
Yes, and a well-earned one. And from the minute I saw that number 4 Mercedes, and certainly I thought George Kurtz, as the AM in that lineup, he did an excellent job. It was unfortunate on Saturday, but nevertheless the team have reaped the rewards of good driving, good teamwork, good preparation.
He's a former GT4 champion, and this is his 3rd year in the GT3 ranks, but climbing that ladder with aplomb. Well, it's been a fun weekend here in Sonoma. Big thank you to John Watson for pinch hitting on short notice when our pal Calvin Fish came down with some kidney stones. Quick recovery to you, Cal. We'll see you in Circuit of the Americas along with Amanda Busick. Big thanks to our whole production team. Thanks to you as well for tuning in. So long from Sonoma.